Okay, so MVPs, lots of people want to build a digital product. Everyone wants to play startup. And a lot of people waste their money building big, expensive products that suck time and money out of their life, only to be crashing down because most digital products do fail, right? That's
True.
the reality of the startup world dream, right? Now, part of what both of our agencies really try to do is turn that dream into an actual reality by taking people down to earth and educating them on what really goes into building a digital product. And part of that is focusing on an MVP, right? So going back to, you know, what should be the starting point of you have an idea for a digital product. I now want to go rush out and build this thing. What would you say to somebody who's got an idea and they're rushing out to build it and they want to fire up the GitHub and start doing commits? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, whoa there. I think you want to, really vet the idea first, because when you're playing it back in your head, it always sounds great. You always sort of you have this like cognitive bias to that's self-reinforcing there, and I think you really need to test that idea in a variety of ways. And some of the best ways that we know how to do that are through different kind of sprints, so product sprints, research sprints, those sorts of things, to really like identify the kernel of the problem you're trying to solve. This doesn't matter so much if it's sort of a passion project and you're going to be building it, or you're willing to you really feel so strongly about the idea that you have to see it realized. But I think for the more prudent founder, it makes sense to sort of pause and get input from other people, and really refine that product idea through something like a sprint process.
Yeah, so design it first before you go and build it. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's always helpful to have some like vision for it that is down on paper or in Figma or whatever design tool you're using. I want to emphasize like the one thing Dylan said around talking to people and really trying to vet the idea. It's easy to sort of have an insulated view of your product idea via yourselves or your teams, and you're gonna like find blind spots when you start talking to more people. And the earlier you can identify those, the better chance you have of getting ahead of them and addressing them, and the better chance your product will succeed.
Yeah, honestly, I always say a prototype is worth 1,000 meetings. So, design it out, show people, and when you show people, they'll either be blown away by how good of an idea this can be, and I've worked with companies that okay, here's our prototype, see it. Oh yeah, I will buy that. I'll sign up for it. I can see it. I can visually see it. Now you know that you have some kind of product market fit with them, right? But the other thing too is just like market it first, right? If your goal is to end up marketing this thing and bringing it to a market, get it in front of people and see if they would be willing to buy it. And I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do without actually writing and building a piece of custom application. There's lots of tools you can use. You could use like Typeform or Outgrow, some like onboarding tools to kind of see if you run a few ads, see if this sticks with people, see if there's a demand for this kind of product or service before you then go build the custom application. Because for most founders and most startups, I find it's that need for the custom application really comes when you're in that scaling mode as well, right? When you're really going to market at a scale, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. you can figure out if this is something that people are willing to buy without the product, right? And you can, in some cases, you may be able even to do sort of like almost like a pre-order model, right? Like, have people sign up even before the thing exists. And another way to ease into it is through sort of traditional or more manual operations. So you don't need, if you're building a SaaS product, for example, you don't necessarily need the product to work end to end and all the features. If there's something very basic there or can be achieved through, in the short term by having people manually do some of the work, that's okay. And then you automate those processes later and make things more efficient through software. But that's a really good way. I mean, that's kind of that's not every problem, but some problems, can be done sort of offline without an actual digital product. And that's a really good way to assure that you actually have something people will buy. So
Yeah, don't scale too early, right?
Yeah.
You can do a bunch of stuff manually to test out an idea, even if it's pretty inefficient in the short term. But if you're only testing with a handful of users, you can do that inefficient thing. It's not going to cost you that much time until you get a bunch more users. And then you can figure out how to automate, those things, or like figure out how to make those processes more efficient.
And that applies also to just parts of a product, right? Like, for example, a payment system, a self-serve payment system is something that a lot of digital products have, but it's not something that every digital product needs from the very beginning, first offering. There's very traditional ways of doing payments and managing subscriptions. When you have a small number of users, that works very well. So you don't necessarily need to have a beautiful checkout flow or sort of reporting and complex billing admin pages or anything like that. So there's ways even beyond the MVP to sort of simplify and reduce costs.
Yeah, I mean, I was working with this one startup one time, and it was an open house app, right? So you're essentially running open houses, and it's kind of like an event-based app. And I remember we were so focused on getting the listings and integrating listings into the app and having a map functionality. And we build all this functionality, and then we go to the trade show and we're demoing it, right? And everyone's like, oh, well, I love this, like this hosting feature, like the email marketing side. Oh, yeah. But have you seen the listing feature that we built out?
Right.
Oh, no, I don't care about that. No, I have no interest in that. I don't care about that. But I really want to see this. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why didn't we prototype this first and just show it in the hands of, because you spend time invested in these features and building them out, and then only to see that actually maybe the features that you prioritized lower, people actually care about more and are willing to pay for it. Yeah. Right.
See what people care about.
Yeah. And it's a lot cheaper to do that with design than technical debt. Right. So like there was a philosophy in like books like The Lean Startup and stuff like that, where you just go and you build the MVP. Like you just program it and you build it. Where has that gotten people, and how does that kind of fit? Like, what are some of the issues with just going and building something really quick?
I mean, like this discussion is like, there's a lot you can do before you get to that stage that will make that stage much more productive, or eliminate that stage, right? You'd like find out, okay, these ideas aren't resonating with people, or we need to go to a different direction. The MVP turns into something different. In essence, though, I think the idea of an MVP is flawed. So this minimum viable product tends to be like focused on the viable, and you end up with, in many cases, a a product that tries to do a lot in kind of a crappy way. So it's trying to build out like all the features that someone thinks are important to support their idea, but they do it in the bare minimum way. And they do that across lots of features. And you end up with like a very wide product that is not very good. And so it's trying to do a lot of things, but not very well. And we see that as like not a great path to success.
So what would be the alternative? What's the better approach for it?
So the better approach from our perspective, and I think this is a term we got from you, is this idea of an MLP, which is like a minimum lovable product, where instead of focusing on breadth, you think about it kind of vertically. So there's an idea of things that go into making a product good. First, it's functional. On top of that, it's reliable, right? You can count on it working. On top of that, it's usable. This is where like design really comes in as super important. And then on top of that, it's delightful. Like people love using it. And where the MVP often focuses is just on that bottom layer of making things functional. And if instead you try to cut vertically and say, we want like less features, fewer features, but we want those features or that one single like really important feature to be functional, reliable, usable, and delightful. We're doing less, but we're doing it better. That's where we like to start. And that plays into like, how can you then iterate on top of that, which is, a topic we talked about before.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to do one thing really good. And I think that that's something that people underestimate, how hard it is to do one thing really good. But what I've noticed with most of the digital products that have been successful that I've worked with, they just did one thing really well. And especially when you're starting out or building something new within an organization, just do that one thing really well. And when you look at a million things on the internet every day, you have a second to, first of all, from a marketing perspective, convince people to interrupt their doom scrolling for 30 seconds. So you have to capture them with a message that's like, this is going to bring you value instantly right now. And then you're going to have to go to a landing page that's going to say, welcome, you came to the right place. Now you need to give them one thing to do, like one job to be done that they can instantly, I call it like the magic moment or the aha moment in the product where you say, you know what, that saved me a lot of time, right? If and one of our old clients, Contact Monkey, email tracking app, the founder was absolutely hell-bent on they need to track that first email first. There's 100 other features that we want to build out later. I don't care. I want them to send an email, and I want to meticulously track that email has been sent and they've seen the value of that product. Yeah. So
yeah, I think that's exactly what you want to do. I think you can really get caught up in sort of chaining together features and in your own mind, thinking, oh, if we can do this, then we can do this. And now that we can do this, we can do this. And you keep, chaining on more and more. Or
even not we can do. It's like, if I do this, people are going to want this other thing.
Yes,
and I really need to give them this other thing because I gave them this first thing. And you just like, and we've gone through this, right?
Exactly.
Like we've built a product where if, we started out with an idea of better code reviews, right? Like code reviews that support like a stacked workflow. And there are, now products that do this, but when we were building it, there weren't. And we, started out with this simple idea and we're like, well, actually we need an interface on top of this. Like it started out as a command line tool. Well, we need like people need to go to like an interface if they're going to really use this. And then we started building the interface. And then, once we had the interface, this interface isn't good. Like it doesn't have enough that people are going to really want to use it. So we need to build this other detailed screen. And but now that we have this detailed screen, we need like super, interactive diffing that people, really want to use because we want to make it super easy for them. oh, and now that we have this diffing, we need like comments on the diffs. And you just like keep, psyching yourself up into needing to build. And then you end up like not actually launching something until you have so much that, it takes you so long to like get this in the hands of users.
I think that's the trap, right? It's
Yeah.
like you, because you convince yourself that like if they are doing this, in your software, then they're gonna want to and need to do this other thing, and or it's opportunistic, where it's like, well, if we can do this, we can also do this. So there's like different ways you can sort of trap yourself. And it's a really bad pattern to get into.
It's such human nature though, and
totally.
it's such a there's
like
there's no problem to solve, but I'm gonna solve the problem that doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's
right?
like I'm gonna remodel my kitchen, and well, if we're doing the kitchen, I guess we should probably do the bathroom, and we should, it's really easy to get caught up in that.
Yeah, and it's like but what happens when you do that is that you start to lose track of that original core, like what is the lovable thing about this, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like I'm building a product too on the side, and as soon as you get in those meetings and you start sketching out new features, it is fun. It is fun to do.
Yeah.
But really, if you take a step back and you look at what I want to tell myself is what's that one thing that it's doing really well, and how can we get more and more people to do that. So I think it's really important that founders or any entrepreneur, they really build marketing into that mix as well. And typically there's a dev silo and a design silo and a product silo, and marketing and growth aren't really in that product world. So I think that that's such an important thing too, is just testing that metric and making sure that the product is built around, at least in the initial stage, you really build to get the numbers up on that metric and make everything around that single thing delightful. And more delightful.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that is how you extend that stack, right? So the functional, reliable, usable, delightful stack, like then you have like, okay, it's a marketable on top of that. And the typical MVP way to do it is like, okay, we're starting with the functional. We're going to go as, broad across the functional. After we have that, we'll make it reliable. We'll figure out how we scale it and like make it super like solid, and then we'll make it like more usable, make people like feel better about using it, and then we'll make it delightful, and then we'll market it, but that's a trap.
Yeah, and we see that all the time on our end too, because you'll have these big clunky systems that have 150 different features, and they're like, oh well, we got to redesign it now. And it's like, oh God, like here's this ball of yarn. Can you please reorganize this ball of yarn for me?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a ball of yarn that does have some traction, but sometimes you need to separate it, and it's a big overhaul to look at some of that stuff.
I mean,
right?
I think there is a shadow side of what we're proposing though as well that is good to keep in mind. When you do that what we're saying is like the wrong way.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It's such a complex thing to do.
Yes.
But when you see, there's obviously positives and negatives to each approach, right?
Certain failure modes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I think a failure mode of like this kind of vertical way of doing it is you don't have as much of the big picture, right? If you're sort of focusing on these narrow slices, and you're like focused on like, okay, one single feature, like you're letting go of like, how does this whole thing fit together, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are trying to kind of extend out, there is a danger of, all right, this becomes like a Frankenstein of like slices, right? And so that's where design, I think, can really help, is if you have a design that takes kind of this maximal approach that like looks at the whole thing. So you're not building the whole thing, but you are conceiving of it, writing it down, mocking it up. Like that can help guard against that.
Yeah, and you always have that like constantly changing. Think of it as components, and the digital products that release and get better and better and get more and more lovable. Think of your like Figmas or something like that. They tend to be really good at, okay, this is what this is the roadmap, but we're not gonna like come in while development is working on it and start messing up the roadmap while it's being built. That's essentially like trying to change the tracks while the train's running. But we're going to have an innovation sector here that is going to be constantly prototyping, constantly getting user feedback on things, constantly seeing if people actually want to get these things done. And if it hits that acid test like 3 or 4 or 5 times, then you put that feature into the roadmap, right? That seems to be the workflow that has been successful. Okay, one thing I do want to talk about is we're talking a little bit about, okay, yeah, don't build it until, and I came across a pretty, I was talking with the founder the other day, and they had done everything to not build it. They had built a growth engine with a bunch of tools, and now everything's sitting on different SaaS. It's basically a mesh of different SaaS products put together. So it's not really a product, but they have a lot of customers, they have a lot of scale, they have a great service. So at what, like in that point, you're then looking to invest in your technology, and you're now saying, hey, I have product market fit. I now have to set this up to scale. How would you guys approach something like that?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you really do need to understand the sort of core technical problems and challenges of that, because then your technical architecture starts to become relevant. When you have real customers, reliability is super important. It looks like scale is starting to be, a challenge. So understanding really the problem domain and like how to how you think about your core entities, how those states change, all of those kinds of things becomes very important, and getting those right becomes very important, because as you do build up even more and you build more features and you have more scale, making good architectural decisions means that you are able to continue to build a coherent product, and not doing that, not making good decisions there, starts, like, the cracks start to show. And so you do need, I mean, if you're at that point where you have scale, you have a bunch of real customers that depend on you, then that's when you should be thinking about those kinds of problems for sure. So that's part of it.
Yeah. I think the other part is like, what is the differentiator in your product? And where do you want to invest technically? Because, it's hard to talk about it in the abstract, but, if you're using a bunch of SaaS services and kind of gluing them all together to like make your product, there's probably some of those you can just keep, right? And you can integrate with the thing you are bringing into your own stack. So you don't need to like figure out how to re-architect the whole thing to cover like all these services you may be gluing together right now. It's like, what are the pieces that actually, differentiate your product, or where are you going to add more value? Where do you want to like extend these products or these workflows? Like that's where you should focus. And you can still probably continue to use, a bunch of the things that you already are. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't want to say, you have to build everything from scratch, right? Like, you can leverage lots of off-the-shelf software these days.
Yeah, V2 is often a really appealing idea, right? It's like, okay, well, we built all this stuff on, this is our V1, and it's kind of a rat's nest of like different services and difficult to maintain. We're going to rewrite everything, and we're going to, start from scratch and
make it a beautiful unified system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's also a mistake, right? Like I said before, having a coherent technical architecture is important, but it's also important not to boil the ocean. And while you should have some like technical North Star, you shouldn't necessarily rewrite everything in the moment. So yeah, it's a balance again.
To me, it comes back down to roadmap, like where, because I think at that point, you see lots of products do that, they start to go down vertical. Like I'm now gonna service down these verticals, and that's where you do need that like foundational architecture there, so that you're setting yourself up for that 3 to 5 year plan. And if you're still just building things out, then that's fine. But if you're doing a 3 to 5 year plan at that point, you're probably gonna want to raise some money to get to that level, right? So you're gonna want to, and I think investors I don't see investors flocking to digital products that are built as an integration of 5 or 6 different systems, right? So
it's hard to have a moat when you're doing that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the core idea of prototyping, selling that roadmap, you're just at a different point in your business. You're selling that roadmap likely to like investors or something like that. Okay, so I want to do a lightning round that I just thought of right now. But okay, so here's the theoretical thing. We're starting a startup together. I have two good technical people. Okay, I've got this great idea. I just want to build it. What tech stack am I building it on? Lay it down. I don't care. I have no strategy. I have unlimited money. I just want to build. Hit me with your best tech stack.
One way to think about it, if you don't really, if you don't have any specification and you just want to
VC money to burn, I'm ready to go. Yeah. Let's do it.
I mean, there's lots of considerations, but I mean, one thing you can think about is like hireability, right? So if you build a product on some esoteric tech stack, Microsoft
Parse.
Access or
Parse.
something. Then
I built an app on Parse once.
I don't know what Parse is.
I got zucked. Zuckerberg was like, "Sorry, dude, we're shutting down Parse." Okay, so who's going to be maintaining it?
So who's going to be building and maintaining this thing? You want a profile of technologies.
So what are all the cool developers developing on right now?
Okay, so I mean, these days, TypeScript, Node, React, that's a pretty safe stack. That is very flexible. There's a lot of great libraries. It's also a nightmare for lots of reasons, but lots of people like it, and lots of people are competent at it. So it's safe.
Yeah, and it has like a full stack benefit, right? So a lot of people, like if you're writing TypeScript, you can do the front end in TypeScript. You can do the back end, the server side in TypeScript. And so you have like a bit more of a unified stack in that way. I'm surprised you didn't like advocate for Go.
Go is a little more niche.
Yeah.
I do like it myself, but again, like you do need to make a number of choices, right? If you're building a web app, you do need to make choices about UI libraries and things like that, as well as the backend and the database and all of these things. So, I think it devils in the details, Justin.
Okay, all right. One more. If you were gonna do something like really avant-garde and like hip text, like something like cutting edge, what would you do? Like not tried and true. I don't care. I want something like
you want something
cutting,
exciting, new and exciting.
Yeah, I want something. If it doesn't have AI in it, I don't want it really.
I mean,
like, has AI made its own tech stack yet?
No, it hasn't made its own tech stack.
No, damn it.
Not yet. Soon. I feel like I read about a new framework or language every week. So I think you could just go to like Hacker News.
Exciting ones?
Read the
exciting ones that have you like, ooh, I don't want to try it, but I want to try
Rust is a very hip, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even Rust is getting kind of,
a little rusty.
A little rusty because it's been around for 5-6 years or something like that. So it's
Isn't there also a like survival game called Rust?
No? Survival game?
No, Rust. Anyways,
What is a survival game?
It's like when you get put in an island and then you have to
one of
forge
those.
your way,
Oh, okay.
which is a great metaphor for like startup MVPs, I guess,
that's
right?
Throw us on.
So that would be like a chaos version would be Rust.
I think Rust has a little bit more stability and is a little bit more used a little more broadly than it used to be. I think there's nowadays we don't even know the names because we we don't keep up that much.
Try.
Well,
what's the name of the thing that like compiles your front end code? You know what I'm talking about? It's escaping me right now.
It compiles your front end code.
Yeah, like into I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Can you give me any
information
I can use?
It was there and then it slipped away.
Okay, yeah, I get that too sometimes.
So, okay, well, that's good. I think we'll wrap it up there. So as far as MVPs go, I hope everybody learns something about them. If you guys
don't call them MVPs.
Yeah, don't call them MVPs. Call them minimal lovable products. We also have an idea of maybe talking about maximum viable products. We might that might be a part 2 for this one. Anyways, thanks for coming by. And,
thanks for having us.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you.